we'd like to turn to the book of Daniel, chapter 3. Begin reading with verse 14. Read down through verse 25. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in the army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, their hats, and their other garments, and were cast in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king astonied, and rose up in haste, and spake and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound in the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. The opening statement of Daniel, of the book of Daniel, in chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. We're not going to read that, but it establishes the historical background of the book. And what is said there takes us back to 2 Kings, chapter 24, and verses 12 through 14, where we see 10,000 of the most promising of Judah carried away in the Babylonian captivity. Nebuchadnezzar's plan and intent was to take these Jewish captives, the most gifted amongst the Hebrews, the young men, those showing a great aptitude and various types of learning, those who seemed like they would be quick to comprehend and understand. And then he would brainwash them, re-educate them, and then send them back to their homeland as agents of the Babylonian Empire. And they would govern as loyal subjects to Babylon. Satan's tactics haven't changed. He uses that same today. But that's a different message. Nebuchadnezzar knew that before he could get these Hebrews to act like Babylonians, to live like Babylonians, he must make them first think like Babylonians. So to accomplish this, in chapter 1, verse 4, these would be taught the ways and the philosophies and the religion of Babylonian culture. They would be taught a new way of looking at life, basically. They were taught, chapter 1, verse 4, the language of the most educated of the people, the Chaldeans. And they were introduced to the luxuries of Babylon. Again, that's in chapter 1, verse 5. All of this is in an attempt to develop in them an appetite for Babylonian culture, thus changing their lifestyle. Nebuchadnezzar, chapter 1, verse 6 and 7, changed their names. He did this in an attempt to where they would be more identified with Babylon than their birthplace. So from all this, we see that there was an all-out effort to bring these Hebrew captives into conformity, to press them into the mold and mindset of Babylonian culture. There was an all-out effort to get them to fit in, to accept, to embrace the ways of Babylon. In the end, again, the plan was they would be sent back to Judah to govern the Jews. Our text is the record of the faith of 3 of these captives. Again, over 10,000 were taken captive. What we read here concerns 3. Their Hebrew names, chapter 1, verse 7, are Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Their Babylonian given names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. In this account, we are given some insight into the faith that is required for living and serving God in a pagan society and culture, because that's where they were. We want to center the thought of the message upon the answer that these 3 gave to Nebuchadnezzar in verse 17 and 18, focusing upon 2 phrases, which I believe describe their faith. Verse 17, if it be so. If it be so. Verse 18, but if not. But if not. So the subject is a if it be so, but if not kind of faith. That's the kind of faith that we need. So let's look at the events, we're all familiar with them, that lead to the text. In Daniel chapter 3, God's requirements and the world's requirements meet face to face. And somewhere along the line, in every child of God's life, that's going to happen. God's requirements, the world's requirements. And they meet face to face. And when that happens, it presents a challenge. It presents a choice. And that's what's happening here in Daniel chapter 3. Leading into our text, Nebuchadnezzar had built a statue 90 feet high, 9 feet wide. A summons is sent out to all the military, political, judicial, financial officers in every province. And on the appointed day, all of these were gathered in the plain of Dura. Among them were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they're doing pretty well in Babylonian captivity. They've already advanced. They've been re-educated, and they have advanced in Babylon. So on this appointed day, they're gathered in the plain of Dura, hundreds, perhaps thousands, milling around, awaiting instruction. Finally, the herald, the messenger, spoke, delivering the edict of the king. And we see that in verses 4 through 6. When music starts playing, everyone is to bow to this image. Again, you have the requirements of God and the requirements of the world, and they have met. On one side is the Word of God. Exodus 20 verses 4 and 5, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow thyself down to them, nor serve them. On the other side, you have the word of Nebuchadnezzar. Fall down and worship the golden image. We read in verse 7, it's shortly after the orchestra began to play, all the people, the nations, the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. The music played, and everybody falls to the ground in reverence to this statue. Everybody but three Jews. While everyone else was bowing, they stood straight. They stood straight. They did not judge the situation by the outward circumstances. These men remained on their feet, however long it was, while the great mass around them were bowing. They stand firm. They stand decided for God. And there they are. Courageous, in love with the Lord, believing God, aligned with God, with conviction concerning God's law, and there they stand. They stand committed, loyal, and devoted to God. They did not judge the situation by the threat of the king. They did not judge the situation by what might happen to them. Again, by this time they're doing pretty well for captives. They could lose all of that. The disobedience of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was reported to Nebuchadnezzar. And they are arrested. And they're brought before him. And that brings us to our text. Nebuchadnezzar asked them, verse 14, is it true? Is it true? Are the charges true? What has been said about you, is it true? And they said, yes, it is. In verse 15, he offered them another chance. He said, we'll start the music up again. And if you're ready and you bow, we'll pretend none of this other stuff ever happened. You think about it. You let me know. Verse 16, they reply, we're not careful to answer thee in this matter. That is, Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need any time to think about it. We don't need to pray about it. In other words, there's no need. There's no need for you to give us another chance because we're going to do the same thing again. Our decision will be the same. Honoring and obeying God was not an issue on the table for these men. And it never should be. It's non-negotiable. We're to obey God. It's not something we bring to the table. It's not a matter of negotiation. And that's what they're telling Nebuchadnezzar. They did not deliberate. They did not hesitate in their answer. They did not discuss it amongst themselves. What do you think we should do? Their answer is an expression of their faith. So let's look at the faith that they expressed. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Verses 17 and 18. Answered as one. 3 men, but they answered as one. Their faith was not intimidated. What does it take? We need to make personal examination. What does it take to intimidate our faith? Because that says a lot about our faith, whatever the answer is. And then we read in verse 17 and 18 these 2 phrases. If it be so, but if not. That is a statement that covers all circumstances. That is a statement that covers every situation. What they said was a statement of love, attachment, allegiance, commitment, loyalty to God. And it covers all circumstances and situations. When they said, "Be it known unto thee, O king," they are saying, Nebuchadnezzar, we don't want you to have any doubt upon this matter. We're not going to bow. We're not going to bow. We will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So it is a statement of resolve for God. They are saying, we are determined. It is our resolve at all cost to serve God. If so, but if not. Again, it covers all situations. It was a statement regarding their purpose in life. They are saying, we will serve God regardless of what you do. Regardless of what you do, we're going to serve God. Regardless of what God does, we're going to serve Him. Again, it covers all circumstances and situations. So again, verse 17, if it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And He will deliver us, one way or the other, out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. When they said, our God, there in verse 17, that was a statement of their identity. It was a statement of their priority. When they said, our God, and then notice, and thy gods, that was a statement of distinction. A statement of God's superiority over all else. So in using those words, our God, thy gods, they were saying to Nebuchadnezzar that there was a difference between them and Him. Our God, thy gods. There's a difference between us, and God has made the difference. And we are not going to bow. All of this has its basis in faith. And the object of their faith is those two words, our God. Our God. It consists of a knowledge of Him. It consists of a persuasion. He says, our God is able. He's able. What do they base His ability upon? Who He is. His ability is not based upon the circumstance, the obstacle, the difficulty. His ability is based upon who He is. Our God, because He is God, is able. That's faith. It was an expression of their faith. And they say that with conviction. And they say it with confidence and commitment. They are saying, our God can. Our God can. They are affirming what Jeremiah said in Jeremiah 32:17. Nothing is too hard for God. And what Christ said in Mark 10, verse 27, for with God all things are possible. And what Paul said in Ephesians 3:20, now unto Him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. So they say, our God is able. The faith is in God, not in His works. The faith is not in God's works. The faith is in God. We know that God can and will deliver us. We know that He's able because of who He is. So the object of their faith is seen in those two words. Our God. Our God. God is the Creator. And Creator God is able. Our God is Almighty. And Almighty God is able. Our God is sovereign. And sovereign God is able. Our God is all-knowing. And all-knowing God, He knows how. He knows how. God is omnipresent. An omnipresent God who is not limited by time or space, He is able. He is able. Now notice, they said, if it be so, that is Nebuchadnezzar, if you throw us in the burning fiery flame, they didn't have any guarantees that He wouldn't. Our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. In other words, our God is greater than you, and our God is greater than the burning fiery furnace. Because of who and what He is, our God is able. And they trusted that He would. Because it goes on to say, and He will deliver us out of thine hand, O King. Because of who and what God is, He can. Because of who He is, He has miracle-working power. He has healing power. He has delivering power. He has overcoming power. He has providing power. He has removing power. He has sparing power. He has calming power, soothing power. He has restoration and transforming power. He has saving power. And it's all based upon who and what He is. And they say our God is able. Our God is able to work a miracle in our life. And so it is today. God can heal your loved one. God can deliver from inescapable prisons. God can overcome insurmountable obstacles and opposition. God can provide for insurmountable needs. God can calm and soothe aching hearts. God can restore and transform lives and homes and marriages. God can bring back prodigal children. God can save your loved ones. This is a wonderful truth. Our God is able. Because of who He is able. Because of what He is, He can. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego believed our God is able. And they were absolutely persuaded our God is able. So you can put whatever you like on the other side of if it be so. If it be so. If you cast us into the burning fiery furnace, if that be so, we believe and are absolutely persuaded because of who God is, because of what God is, He can. But that's not all. There's something else. But if not, if you cast us into the burning fiery furnace, God is able to deliver. And if God doesn't deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, but if not, again, our God is able. Such is always so. There's never a time when that's not so. Because of who and what God is, He may not. God can deliver. God may not deliver. He has that right because He's God. In Acts chapter 12, we'll not turn there, but Herod killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Could God have delivered James from such? Yes, of course. But He didn't. But He didn't. Peter, shortly thereafter, was arrested. And Herod was going to kill him the next day. But God delivered Peter. It was true in both cases. God can. But in one He did not. Because of who and what God is, He may work a miracle over here and He may not work one over here. May there be no doubt. May we be absolutely assured whatever is going on in our life, God can. But He may not. But He may not. And if He doesn't, it shouldn't change our faith. We are to continue to love Him, to trust Him, to obey Him, to be committed and devoted to Him, and to worship Him. If God delivers us from the furnace, we're going to do these things. If God doesn't, we're going to do these things. God can, but if He doesn't. In verse 20, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are bound. In verse 21, they're cast into the furnace. Verse 23, they're in the furnace. In verse 24 and 25, Nebuchadnezzar looks into the furnace, and there's four. And they're loose. And they're walking in the midst of the fire. And they have no hurt. There's no harm. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. And I believe that fourth man is none other than Jesus Christ. Christ the Savior of sinners. Christ the Redeemer, the Shepherd. He's in the fire with them. And I don't believe that He showed up after they were cast into the fire. I believe He was there waiting. And I believe that's still so today. God will meet you there. He'll meet you there. And that's what happened. So they had a faith that could stand in the face of reality. That burning fiery furnace was very real. The command of the king was very real. The threat of the king was reality. The people bowing, the people all around them bowing was reality. Bound with cords was reality. The furnace was reality. The fire was reality. The possibility of death was reality. But their faith was reality as well. Faith will be tested. Faith will always be tested. And real faith will stand the test. It'll always stand the test. So Christ in the furnace with them was reality as well. Again, faith brings us to a place where we experience Jesus Christ. Oh, what God's people rob themselves of because of unbelief. Faith brings us into an experience of Christ. So here we are, just like these three. We live, the whole world's this way, a God-despising, secularist, pluralistic society and culture. But it's still our responsibility to maintain reverence for God, passion for the Lord. Still our responsibility to live separate, clean, holy, right, unshakable, and valiant lives for God. How do we do that? Faith. Faith. A certain kind of faith. It's the kind of faith that we saw earlier, the faith that is commended by Christ. It is a, if it be so, we're still going to believe. But if not, we're still going to continue on. It is a faith that makes God more of a reality than anything else. It is a faith that makes the Word of God come into our lives and into our hearts. It is a faith that causes us to love Him more. In order to love God more, you need more faith. Faith is our sight. The more you see God, the more you love God. It requires faith. The more you see God, the more you know God. It all requires faith. It is a faith that impacts every area and phase of our lives. Faith makes its way into every nook and cranny of our life. It is a faith that enables us to see God. Yes, we can see the burning fiery furnace. We can see Nebuchadnezzar, but faith looks beyond that and sees God. Faith causes us to lean upon God. Faith causes us to draw from God. Faith causes us to cleave to God. Causes us to cast all upon Him. It causes us to have desire for God. Causes us to seek the heavenly over the earthly. Faith enables us to enter the Red Seas at His command. It is a faith that enables one to stand before Goliath. A faith that enables us to be and to do whatever God calls us to be and do. It is a faith that will say with Job, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. If it be so, Nebuchadnezzar, we're not sure what you're going to do, but whatever it is, our God is able. And we're not certain what God is going to do. He may deliver us, He may not, but doesn't change anything. Doesn't change a thing. A faith that will cause us to say with Joshua, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. He says, you all do whatever you want. It's not changing me one iota. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. It is a faith that causes us to excel and go further and further and further for God. This is the kind of faith that we need. If it be so. And you can put whatever you want after that. You have a child on a deathbed. And you pray for that child. Lord, raise them up. Lord, heal their body. And God is able to do that. And you believe that. But what if He doesn't? What if He doesn't? It's not that He's not able. But He didn't. And if He didn't, you had to have good reason for not doing it. And that's where, again, faith comes in. Circumstances should have no bearing upon faith. If it be so, our God is able. And if not, God's still God. All we need, as we said earlier, we need a faith. A certain kind, a certain type of faith. Not little faith, great faith. Faith that is commended by God. Faith that God takes notice of. And where do we get it? From Him. From Him. Lord, increase our faith. And that is a prayer that we can pray every single day. Lord, increase our faith. Our faith may be at its highest that it's ever been. And you should still pray, Lord, increase our faith. Because it can always be more. It can always be more. Brother Dave, if you come and lead us